Hello, and welcome to Live Parkinson's, Live an Exceptional Life, the podcast dedicated to helping you live a great quality of life with Parkinson's through science, stories, and sharing tips and strategies. I'm your host, Chris Custenbotter, and I've been living with Parkinson's for the past 15 years. Today's topic is Hope on the Horizon, Stem Cell Research for Parkinson's. Imagine this. You're sitting in your neurologist's office, anxious and a little worried. You've been doing everything right, exercise, medication, making some healthy changes to your diet, but the symptoms of Parkinson's still creep in, making your daily life just a little bit harder. When it's time to see the doctor, they mention something intriguing: stem cell research. Could this be the breakthrough you and so many others living with Parkinson's have been waiting for? For years, Parkinson's has been a condition we could only manage and not reverse. But now scientists are on the verge of something extraordinary, using stem cells to restore lost dopamine-producing cells in the brain. Clinical trials are already underway, and for the first time, real hope is on the horizon. In today's episode, we're diving into the science, the progress, and what this could mean for the future of Parkinson's treatment. If you've ever wondered whether stem cell therapy could be a game changer, stick with me. You won't want to miss this. One of the reasons I wanted to discuss stem cell research is because it's cutting-edge research and it's being studied in 4 key areas: neural transplantation, gene therapy, cell-based therapy, and drug discovery and development. All 4 of these areas have the potential to help those of us living with Parkinson's, depending on the outcomes of the research. And the other reason I wanted to discuss stem cell research is because you may have read or heard about stem cell research in the news and the controversy regarding the use of embryonic stem cells. So in this episode, I wanted to provide information on the different types of stem cells and how they're being used in research. Hopefully this will give you a better understanding of what stem cells are and how and why they are being studied. Now you may be thinking to yourselves, Chris, this sounds really technical and clinical studies don't sound like fun and excitement. Look, I realize when I mention clinical studies and research, most people are going to say, hey, I think I left something cooking on the stove and have to go. Or they just sit there with blank stares while they're thinking about their favorite vacation spots. Luckily for you, I'm a science nerd. Yes, I said it. I'm a science nerd. Now, I don't run around telling everybody this, but I do enjoy reading clinical studies and keeping up on the latest research. So my promise to you is to take the clinical research and boil it down into simple, easy to understand information. Because after all, I am a simple person and I like to keep things simple and have honest discussions. So I hope you'll stick with me so we can all learn more about stem cells and their potential for the Parkinson's community. Plus, as an added bonus, and because I always like to look at the positive, you'll look like a genius to your friends, family, and coworkers because you'll be able to spout off everything you've learned about stem cells. That's my gift to you. So, as always, let's go over what we'll be discussing in this episode so you can hold me accountable to cover everything I said I would. Now, before we dive in, I just have a quick disclaimer. The information being provided in this podcast is for informational and general knowledge purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Consult your healthcare professional for any health concerns or before making any decisions regarding your health. Now, we'll lead it off with what are stem cells and why are they important? And then we'll talk about the different types of stem cells and which ones are being used in research. Also, as part of the stem cell discussion, we'll look at why they're important and their relevance to Parkinson's. Then we'll transition into the main focus and look at the key research areas in stem cell research for Parkinson's, looking at 4 key areas: neural transplantation, gene therapy, cell-based therapies, and drug discovery and development. Then we'll move into potential practical applications, including looking at improving our motor symptoms, improving quality of life, and disease modification. Then we'll tie it all together in a nice bow and send you out into the world to share your newfound knowledge. So, hopefully that sounds like a good plan to you. All right, if you're ready to join me, let's rip the tape and open the box and see what's inside. And let's start by answering the biggest question. What are stem cells? Well, stem cells are remarkable because they have the potential to develop into many different cell types in the body. They could be bone cells, nerve cells, muscle cells, blood cells, and they do this during early life and growth. They're like the body's raw materials cells from which all other specialized cells functions are generated. So think of stem cells as the body's master builders. Stem cells actually are really cool because they're remarkable cells that have the unique ability to self-renew or make copies of themselves. And they can develop into more specialized cells, again, like blood cells, nerve cells, muscle cells, and more. All right, now let's look at how they play a crucial role in our bodies. During embryonic development, when we're embryos in the womb, stem cells are responsible for generating all the different cell types that make up our bodies. According to the article, Stem Cells, Types, What Are They, and What Do They Do by the Cleveland Clinic. The article notes that stem cells are involved in growth and repair of tissues. Throughout our lives, stem cells continue to play a vital role in tissue repair and regeneration. So, for example, bone marrow cells constantly produce new blood cells to replace those that die or are lost. For instance, during cancer treatments, the chemotherapy may reduce the number and amount of white blood cells and red blood cells being produced. So, especially white blood cells, and that's why people are at high risk for infection. Now, another example is skin stem cells, and they help repair cuts and wounds. And then, as a final example, stem cells help to maintain the ongoing renewal and replacement of cells in many tissues and organs in the body. So your body is constantly replacing older cells with new ones, and stem cells are involved in this process. All right, so what type of stem cells are there? Well, there are three types of stem cells. There's embryonic stem cells, adult stem cells, and induced pluripotent stem cells, or iPSCs. All right, let's look at the embryonic stem cells first. Now, these are the ones that were in the news because of the controversy of using cells from embryos for research. Embryonic stem cells are derived from early stage embryos and are considered to be the most versatile because they can potentially differentiate into any cell type in the body. Now, according to the article, Understanding Stem Cell Research from UCLA.org, in 1998, scientists succeeded in isolating human embryonic stem cells for the first time. Since then, more versatile and regenerating properties and the potential of human embryonic stem cells has proved vital to scientific research. Now, that enables scientists to learn about human development process that they would otherwise not be able to do. Now, the article also notes that unlike tissue-specific stem cells, embryonic stem cells have two distinct capabilities. First, they can replicate indefinitely, and they're pluripotent, meaning they can produce more than 200 cell types found in the human body through a process called differentiation. Next up is adult stem cells. So these are the ones that have grown up. According to the article from Mayo Clinic entitled Stem Cells, What Are They and What Do They Do? Adult stem cells are found in small numbers in most adult tissues like bone marrow or fat. Now, compared with embryonic stem cells, adult stem cells have more limited ability to give rise to various cells in the body. And then finally, the third type of stem cell is the induced pluripotent stem cell, or iPSCs. Now, these are adult stem cells, but they've been genetically programmed to behave like embryonic stem cells. The iPSCs, according to the UCLA article, originate from cells such as skin or blood that are removed from a person and reprogrammed back to a pluripotent state, meaning that they can develop into a number of different cell types. Now, the UCLA article also notes that, like human embryonic stem cells, these reprogrammed cells can replicate indefinitely as well as differentiate into any cell type in the human body. Now, since iPSCs, or the induced pluripotent stem cells, they're made from patients' own stem cells. So therapies created from these cells could potentially be perfectly matched to the patient. So that's pretty cool that they can take cells out of your body, reprogram them, and then hopefully be able to use those to generate new cells that may be able to provide a match to you as the patient. All right, so let's recap. The 3 types of stem cells are embryonic, and they can potentially develop into any cell in the body. Adult stem cells, they're found throughout the body, but are typically more limited in their ability to develop into other cells or differentiate. And the induced pluripotent stem cells, which are adult stem cells that are genetically reprogrammed to behave like embryonic stem cells. All right, so why are stem cells important for research? And then how can this research be applied to improving human health? Well, stem cell research holds immense promise and opportunity for treating a wide range of diseases and conditions, including degenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, but also heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and birth defects. The more scientists understand about stem cells and have the potential to harness the power of stem cells, they're hoping to be able to develop innovative therapies that can regenerate damaged tissues, replace diseased cells, and ultimately improve the health of people. All right, now that we have an understanding of stem cells and their types, and before we move into key research areas in stem cell research, let's look at how stem cell research is relevant to Parkinson's disease. Stem cell research has shown some significant promise for Parkinson's because, first, it has the potential for replacing lost neurons, which are brain cells. And as we know, Parkinson's is primarily caused by the loss of dopamine-producing neurons in the brain. Now, stem cells, particularly the ones from embryonic or induced pluripotent stem cells, have the potential to develop into these crucial types of neurons. And one of the key areas they're evaluating, which we'll discuss in a few minutes, is transplantation. Now, the goal here is to transplant these newly generated dopamine-producing neurons from stem cells into the affected areas of the brain to replace the lost dopamine-producing cells and also help restore dopamine production again. Wow, that'd be great if they are able to accomplish that mission. Now, another area where stem cell research is relevant to Parkinson's is in understanding the disease mechanisms, or in simple terms, what other things are contributing to Parkinson's. So scientists are using a process called modeling, where they use stem cell models to create, quote, mini brains that mimic the features of Parkinson's. Now, these models help researchers to be able to study the Parkinson's disease process in detail by looking at the genetic and molecular biological mechanisms. Now, in an article published in Dementia Platforms UK, an Oxford PhD student is using 3D mini brains in her model where she's using and growing brain cells in a dish. She's letting the induced pluripotent stem cells accumulate on their own in accordance with some other chemicals that she's got in the dish to have these mini brains in a dish. And she's using these 3D mini brain models to study the natural development of the human brain and explore how the surrounding area affects the dopamine-producing cells in the substantia nigra. And that's the area of the brain that we lose our dopamine-producing cells, which then leads to Parkinson's. Now, the article is titled Growing Mini Brains to Study Parkinson's Disease. Now, I wonder if I could order a dozen of those to help my current brain, which definitely needs some help. Now, they're also studying disease mechanisms to help with drug discovery. Stem cell models can be used to screen for new drugs that may be effective in treating Parkinson's. And stem cells can help to speed up drug discovery and development. Now, let's look at 3 reasons why stem cell research is important. It can help address current limitations with Parkinson's treatment. So while medications help us manage our symptoms, they don't stop the progression of the disease, and they often have side effects. Stem cells have the potential for disease modification, and stem cell therapies may offer the potential not only to alleviate symptoms, but also slow down or halt the progression of Parkinson's. And the final reason is personalized medicine. Stem cell research may be able to be used for personalized treatments that are tailored to your individual genetic makeup and disease progression. Now, it's important to note that stem cell research for Parkinson's is still in its very early stages. Now, while it's promising, there are still some big challenges that need to be addressed, like ensuring the safety and efficacy of stem cell therapies for people. And there are also still some ethical considerations with using the embryonic stem cells. And scientists need to overcome some of the technical challenges when they're developing methods for generating and transplanting dopamine-producing neurons into people. All right, hopefully you all have a good background now on what stem cells are, the different types of stem cells, and why they're important in Parkinson's research. Now let's move into the key research areas in stem cell research for Parkinson's. And we'll lead it off with neural transplantation. Neural transplantation involves, if you just think of gardening where you're transplanting one plant from maybe a pot into the garden, it's the same thing. So neural transplantation involves transplanting dopamine-producing neurons derived from some stem cells like embryonic or the induced pluripotent stem cells into the brains of Parkinson's patients. Now, the goal here is to replace the neurons lost due to the disease and restore dopamine production in affected regions of the brain. So that would be great. If you could, again, start to produce your own dopamine, then you could either probably drastically reduce or get rid of the medication. So that's what neural transplantation is and what's its goal. Let's take a sneak peek and look at some ongoing clinical trials and what some of the results are so far. Now, there are several early clinical trials that are currently underway, primarily phase 1 and phase 2, whose initial focus is on safety, is the process safe, and initial efficacy. Does this show any benefit in a small group of people that this type of therapy may work? So clinical studies, especially phase 1 and phase 2, are going to help researchers, scientists, and companies decide, first of all, is it safe and effective in a small group of people before they go and start to do larger clinical trials? Because if it doesn't show efficacy in a small group, then there's no sense in expanding it into the larger phase 3 clinical trials. The same thing with safety. You want to make sure in phase 1 clinical studies that the product is going to be safe for patients to use. All right, one of the most notable examples of a phase 1 clinical trial that's being conducted is by Blue Rock Therapeutics. Now, in this clinical trial, patients with advanced Parkinson's receive transplants of stem cells derived from dopamine-producing cells. Early results from this trial have shown promising signs of safety and tolerability. Imaging studies suggest that the transplanted cells are surviving and integrating into the patient's brain. So that's incredible. According to the article, Blue Rock Therapeutics phase 1 clinical trial for Parkinson's disease continues to show positive trends at 18 months. That was published by Blue Rock Therapeutics on March 6 of 2024. And they state in there that the investigational cell therapy is called bemdaneprocel. The article notes that it continues to be well tolerated with no major safety issues in all 12 participants in both the low and high dose groups through 18 months. Now, the study used an immune suppression regimen for 12 months to help prevent rejection of the stem cells. So they helped reduce the person's immune response so that the body didn't attack the stem cells that they just implanted and destroy them. So they were on the immune suppression for 12 months. And then the article notes that after stopping the 12-month immune suppression, assessment of 18-month data shows evidence of sustained cell engraftment, meaning the cells are incorporating into the brain region, and the F-DOPA signal means that they're producing dopamine. Now, they note that clinical endpoints continue to improve from 12 to 18 months, with participants in the high-dose group showing greater improvement than the low-dose group. Now, they're planning a phase 2 clinical study that is expected to be enrolling patients here. Now, Dr. Claire Henchcliffe, MD at the UCI School of Medicine Department of Neurology at the University of California, Irvine, said, "It's exciting that bemdaneprocel met safety and tolerability criteria at 12 and now 18 months. Results suggest that these allogenic cells survive and have potentially positive effects even after discontinuation of immunosuppressants," which is great. She goes on to say, "We should not overinterpret results of a phase 1 study, but this is a promising step that deserves to be followed up with further studies. Now, the article also showed some positive trends. Using the Hauser diary, which categorizes patients as being in the on state when their symptoms are well controlled, and in the off state when they experience a worsening of their symptoms, participants in the high group showed a mean increase of 2.7 hours in time spent on the good state, compared with baseline after 18 months. So that means they were able to be in a good state for almost 2.5 to 3 hours longer than they would be before. Now, participants in the low dose group showed a mean improvement of 0.2 hours in the good on state compared with baseline. And time spent in the off state showed a mean decrease of 2.7 hours after 18 months in the high dose group, while the low dose group showed a mean decrease of 0.8 hours in the off state time. Now, it's important to note that these are preliminary results and that larger long-term studies are needed to fully assess the efficacy and long-term benefits of neural transplants. Now, I did want to highlight some of the potential challenges of neural transplantation for fair balance. First is immune rejection. The patient's immune system may recognize these transplanted cells as foreign and attack them and kill the cells. Now, some of the strategies that can be used to address this problem are through the use of immunosuppressors, where they use medications or other means to suppress the patient's immune system to help prevent rejection. Now, this was used in the Bemdane-Procell study for the first 12 months. However, immunosuppression also carries its own risks and side effects, like infection. Another strategy is immune matching, where they're using stem cells from the patients themselves or from closely matched donors, which can help to minimize the risk of immune rejection. Another potential challenge is tumor formation. There is a small risk that transplanted cells may form tumors. So careful monitoring and quality control measures are crucial to minimize the risk. Alrighty, moving on to our next key area of research, and that's gene therapy approaches. Gene therapy involves introducing genetic material, like DNA, into cells to treat a disease. Now, in terms of Parkinson's, stem cells can be genetically modified to deliver therapeutic genes. No, not Levi's or Wranglers, but actual genes directly into damaged brain regions where dopamine cells are dying. Let's outline how this works. So step one, they're going to modify the genes. So researchers, they can engineer stem cells to carry specific genes. These genes that have been engineered to do two things. One, they can be therapeutic genes, and the therapeutic genes produce proteins that promote survival of the neurons or brain cells, and they help with growth and function. So, for example, scientists may engineer genes that increase dopamine production or help protect neurons from damage. Or there are genes that suppress disease, which is the other avenue. And these genes would be the genes that interfere with the activity of the genes involved in the development or progression of Parkinson's, meaning that they help prevent neurons that produce dopamine from dying off. So after the genes have been modified, comes the next step, delivery to the brain. So they've genetically modified these stem cells, and they're generated, and then they're going to transplant them into areas of the brain that are effective, where they can deliver the therapeutic genes to the surrounding cells. Also, stem cells can be engineered to secrete therapeutic proteins, which can act on nearby neurons to help with survival and growth. So we want the surviving or the surrounding neurons to grow and survive as well. So this all sounds great, but how can it be applied? Well, that's a good question. First, it can be used to replace missing genes. No, that doesn't mean you left your gene somewhere when you went swimming. Parkinson's may be linked to specific genetic mutations. Gene therapy can be used to introduce a functional copy of the missing or mutated gene into the affected cells. Now, gene therapy can be used to enhance the neural function by introducing genes that can increase the production of neurotransmitters like dopamine, promote the growth and survival of neurons, and reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. And finally, they can help protect neurons from damage. Now, as with any new drug or therapy, it's important to ensure the long-term safety and efficacy of a new therapy or medication. In terms of safety, gene therapies need to be carefully designed and rigorously tested to help ensure their safety, because the potential risks of gene therapy include unintended side effects. So the body may mount an immune response against the genetically modified cells. And secondly, it may have off-target effects, meaning they may affect other cells than those being targeted. In terms of long-term efficacy, it's crucial to ensure that the effects of gene therapy are long-lasting and that the genetically modified genes that are introduced continue to function effectively over time. I mean, after all, someone's not going to want to go through gene therapy and the whole process and then find out that it only works for 3 weeks or a month. So long-term studies will need to be done to monitor both the safety and efficacy of gene therapies. Alrighty. Whew. That's a lot of information to take in, isn't it? Well, let's keep pressing on and discuss another area of research, and that is cell-based therapies. Remember, Parkinson's is not just about the loss of dopamine-producing neurons. There's other factors that contribute, like inflammation and immune dysfunction also play significant roles in the disease process. Cell-based therapies can be explored to target these aspects by aiming to reduce inflammation and to protect the existing neurons. So, what are some of the potential applications for cell-based therapies? Well, the first is immune cell therapies. There's some research that's focusing on using stem cells to modulate the immune response. All right, Chris, what does that mean? All right, this means is that they can help either boost or suppress your immune response. So cell therapy approaches aims to create a more favorable environment for the neurons to survive and function. Now, cell-based therapies also include anti-inflammatory therapies. This involves delivering anti-inflammatory molecules. In this case, stem cells can be engineered to deliver anti-inflammatory molecules to the brain. Now, these molecules can help reduce inflammation and protect neurons from oxidative stress, which is when you have free radicals that are going to damage cells, and they can be used to promote neuronal repair. Now, there are different considerations with all cell-based therapies. First, it's crucial to target specific immune pathways involved in Parkinson's disease progression while avoiding broad immunosuppression, which could increase your risk of infection, which could lead to other health problems down the road. Now, as with gene therapies, safety and efficacy need to be researched and evaluated. And in addition, long-term effects also need to be included in the program for cell therapies as well. All right, I hope you're still hanging in there with me because we're rounding the final turn. Now let's look at our last area of stem cell research, and that's drug discovery and development. Stem cells offer a powerful tool set when it comes to advancing drug discovery and development for Parkinson's. Now, an interesting study related to this was published in a Harvard Gazette article entitled "Faster in a Dish Model May Speed Up Treatment for Parkinson's." The author notes that a new model that allows scientists to rapidly create Parkinson's disease in a petri dish using stem cells could provide personalized diagnostic and treatment methods. The study results are published in the journal Neuron. The senior study author, Vikram Khurana, at Brigham and Women's Hospital, which is a Harvard-affiliated hospital, said, "We sought to assess how quickly we could make human brain cells in the lab that give us a window into the key processes occurring in the brains of patients with Parkinson's disease." And he went on to state, "The problem is the way that protein clusters form in PD is going to look different in different patients and even in different brain cells of the same patient." So this begs the question, how do we model this complexity in a dish? And how do we do it fast enough for it to be practical for diagnostics and drug discovery? To create this model, Dr. Khurana's lab used special delivery molecules called piggyback vectors and to introduce specific cellular instructions known as transcription factors to turn stem cells into different types of brain cells. So just think of transcription where you might be taking a more complex set of instructions and transcribing it to make it simpler so that somebody could take that and follow the instructions and bake a cake or whatever it happens to be. The same thing with the cells. They're going to transcribe the information so that the cells can use it to differentiate so that the stem cells can turn into different types of brain cells. Then they introduced aggregation or clumping prone proteins like alpha-synuclein, which is central to the formation of protein clusters in PD. Now, their work on this model is enabling for new approaches for classifying protein pathologies in patients and determining which of these pathologies might be best drug targets according to the article. Wow, that's some fascinating work, being able to do all that right in a dish. So let's take a look at how stem cells are also being used in drug discovery and development. First, they're used for screening new drugs. Stem cell-derived models, like those developed from the induced pluripotent stem cells, can be used to screen large libraries of compounds or potential drugs for their ability to protect dopamine-producing neurons from degeneration and promote brain cell survival and growth, improve neuron function, and reduce inflammation. So they can use the information they get to go into these big databases and online libraries and search for potential drugs that may be used for something else. Maybe there's a heart medication that they can use that would provide a benefit to the patient. Second, stem cells can be used for personalized screening. Patient-derived induced pluripotent stem cells can be used to create personalized models of the disease. This allows researchers to test potential drugs on cells that accurately reflect the specific genetic and molecular characteristics of an individual patient's disease. Now, the next area of study in drug discovery and development is studying disease mechanisms. And understanding disease progression is a study area where stem cell models can be used to study the underlying mechanisms of Parkinson's, including how dopamine-producing neurons degenerate, the role of genetic mutations in disease development, and the impact of environmental factors on disease progression. Now, another area of study under disease mechanisms is identifying new drug targets. And by studying the disease process in detail, researchers are able to identify new molecular targets for drug development. And then finally, in terms of drug discovery and development avenues, is developing personalized medicine approaches. The first area is predicting drug response. Patient-derived stem cell models can be used to predict how individual patients will respond to specific drugs. This information can then be used to select the most appropriate treatment for each patient, minimize the risk of side effects, and optimize the treatment outcomes. Now, the personalized medicine approach can also be used in developing precision medicine, and that's the use of stem cell models to guide drug selection and treatment decisions, and it's a key step toward the development of personalized medicine approaches in Parkinson's. Now, remember, this information is for general knowledge and informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Consult with your healthcare professional for any health concerns before making any decisions regarding your health. And remember, all these are still in the early stages of study. All right, now that was a lot of information on the key areas of research with stem cells, but ultimately it's about how all this research can be used to help us in our daily lives to live a good quality of life. Because ultimately, research in and of itself that can be applied to helping patients manage their disease is the best option. Otherwise, if you have this research that can't be applied, it really doesn't help in the long run. So let's round out this podcast with some potential practical applications for stem cell research. And let's start with one area that has a big impact on our lives, and that's motor symptoms. Stem cell therapies hold the potential to significantly improve motor symptoms in Parkinson's in several ways. First, by replacing lost dopamine neurons. Now, we know that Parkinson's, again, is primarily caused by the loss of dopamine-producing neurons in the brain. Stem cell therapies, particularly those involving the transplantation of dopamine-producing neurons derived from stem cells, aim to replace the lost neurons. Now think about the phase 1 Bemdane Purcell study that we talked about, where they're transplanting neurons into the brain to help produce more dopamine. Now, by restoring dopamine levels in the brain, these therapies can potentially help alleviate motor symptoms like tremor, rigidity, bradykinesia or slowness of movement, and postural instability. Also, it could help in improving neuron function. Even if complete replacement of lost neurons isn't achieved, stem cell therapies may improve the function of the remaining neurons that are there. And then this could involve neuroprotection, where you're protecting existing neurons from further damage, and you're trying to promote growth and repair of the ones that are there, and also enhancing communication between the neurons. You want the neurons to be able to talk more effectively with each other. Now, finally, reducing inflammation. Some stem cell therapies, like those using mesenchymal stem cells, you're saying, what are mesenchymal stem cells, Chris? I thought this was going to be simple. Well, they're essentially the body's versatile little helpers. They're a type of stem cell that are found in your bone marrow and your other tissues. Now, what makes mesenchymal stem cells special is their ability to become different types of cells like bone, cartilage, and fat cells. Think of them as the Swiss Army knife of stem cells. They're like little tiny repair kits that your body can use to fix and replace damaged tissues, and using these mesenchymal cells may help reduce inflammation in the brain, which can contribute to the progression of Parkinson's and worsen our motor symptoms. Now, important considerations to keep in mind is that these are in the early stages of research, and while promising, are still, again, very early stage development. And there are clinical trials ongoing that are investigating the safety and efficacy of different stem cell therapies in humans, and individualized responses play a role in the effectiveness of stem cell therapies, and they may vary depending on the individual need of the patient, the stages of the disease, and other factors. Now, stem cell therapies may also have the potential to address quality of life issues, especially in the areas of enhancing motor function, which can lead to better independence and mobility and reduce disability. They're also used for addressing non-motor symptoms through neuroprotection and modulating inflammation, which may have a positive effect on non-motor symptoms like depression and anxiety, because inflammation can contribute to mood disorders. Sleep disturbances. Inflammation can disrupt sleep patterns, and stem cell therapies may help alleviate inflammation, which can have an effect on these motor symptoms. And finally, cognitive impairment. Some research suggests that inflammation may play a role in cognitive decline associated with Parkinson's. And by reducing inflammation, stem cell therapies may help protect your cognitive function. Now, stem cells offer a beacon of hope for people living with Parkinson's. While significant challenges remain, the potential to revolutionize treatment is undeniable. Now, we've explored the promise of neural transplantation, gene therapy, and cell-based therapies in addressing both motor and non-motor symptoms, and even potentially slowing disease progression. Now, it's crucial to remember that this is an area of active research, still in its early stages, and continued investment in research and development is vital. We need to support ongoing clinical trials and encourage collaboration between researchers and still ensure that ethical considerations are always paramount. Now, to those living with Parkinson's, I want to offer a message of hope and encouragement. While there may be challenges along the way, remember, you're not alone. Connect with others in the Parkinson's community, explore new therapies and treatment options with your healthcare provider, and never lose sight of your goals and your aspirations. For those interested in learning more, I encourage you to visit the Parkinson's Disease Foundation at www.parkinson.org, and then the Michael J. Fox Foundation at www.michaeljfox.org, and explore clinical trial options as well at clinicaltrials.gov. And for more information and resources to help you live your best life with Parkinson's, please visit liveparkinsons.com. Subscribe to the free monthly newsletter for the latest news, research, updates, and valuable tips. You can find other valuable free resources and articles on the website as well. To support the podcast and our mission of helping to improve the quality of life for people with Parkinson's, please consider visiting my Ko-fi page at kofi.com/liveparkinsons. And if you feel that the information I provide is of benefit and you want to help support the program through buying me a cup of coffee, it would be greatly appreciated. And then finally, remember to consult with your healthcare provider for personalized advice and treatment options. Again, you're not alone in this journey, and together we can work towards a future where everyone lives a great quality of life with Parkinson's. So stay strong, stay healthy, and live your best life with Parkinson's. Thanks again, and as always, I hope to see you on future episodes, and I appreciate everything. Thank you.